My phone buzzed with another family group chat notification while I mopped the hospital corridor at 2 in the morning. "Keeping it small," my cousin Brittany posted. "Only successful family members at the wedding." The celebration emojis flooded in immediately. Uncle Frank typed laughing faces. Aunt Patricia sent heart eyes. "Smart thinking, honey," Mom wrote. "Quality over quantity." I stared at that screen, my rubber gloves dripping soapy water onto the linoleum floor. 3 years since dropping out of college. 3 years of working nights avoiding family gatherings, listening to whispered conversations about my failures. I stayed quiet in that chat, just like always, while they congratulated Brittany for cutting out the unsuccessful ones. Little did she know what would happen when she Googled my name 3 days before her perfect wedding. The hospital hallway stretched endlessly before me as I pushed my cleaning cart toward the next room. That group chat message kept replaying in my mind like a broken record. Only successful family members. I knew exactly what that meant, and more importantly, who it excluded. 3 years ago, I had been the golden child. Full scholarship to Northeastern University journalism, major dreams of becoming an investigative reporter. Then the panic attacks started during my junior year. The pressure, the constant deadlines, the feeling like I was drowning in expectations. One particularly brutal night after failing to submit a major assignment, I packed my dorm room and drove home without telling anyone. My parents were devastated. Dad stopped taking my phone calls for 6 months. Mom would sigh heavily whenever someone asked about my college plans. The family gatherings became torture chambers, where cousins shared their graduation photos while I served drinks and tried to disappear into the wallpaper. Brittany had been different back then, or so I thought. We grew up like sisters, sharing secrets and supporting each other through everything. When she struggled with math in high school, I tutored her for free every weekend. When she needed money for prom dress alterations, I lent her $200 from my part-time job savings. She never paid me back, but I never asked. Now she was engaged to Derek, some finance executive with a corner office in Hartford and a 6-figure salary. They lived in a sprawling colonial house in West Hartford, complete with a 3-car garage and perfectly manicured lawn. Brittany loved posting pictures of their dinner parties, wine tastings, and weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard. Meanwhile, I lived in a 400-square-foot studio apartment above a pizza shop. The walls were so thin I could hear every conversation from the restaurant below. My furniture came from thrift stores and Facebook Marketplace. Dinner was usually instant ramen or whatever leftovers I could grab from the hospital cafeteria before my shift ended. I worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. 40 hours a week cleaning the hospital weekend mornings, walking dogs for busy professionals, and occasional freelance writing gigs that paid just enough to cover groceries. The writing work was sporadic, usually small articles for local websites about community events or restaurant reviews. The family group chat had become my daily reminder of failure. Cousins posted about promotions, new houses, exotic vacations. Brittany shared engagement party photos from some exclusive country club, everyone dressed in designer outfits while clinking crystal champagne glasses. The comments were always the same supportive enthusiasm, hearts, and congratulations flooding the screen. But whenever I shared anything, the response was lukewarm at best. A picture of the sunset from my tiny apartment window got 2 likes. Mentioning a small writing assignment earned 1, "Good for you," from my grandmother. The contrast was painfully obvious. I finished mopping the pediatric ward and headed toward the storage closet to refill my supplies. As I organized cleaning bottles and fresh towels, my phone buzzed again. More wedding planning chatter in the group chat. Brittany was sharing pictures of centerpieces, asking for opinions between white roses and cream peonies. "Everything looks so elegant," Aunt Patricia gushed. "This is going to be the wedding of the century." "Derek is so lucky," Uncle Frank added. "Our Brittany always had such sophisticated taste." I scrolled through the messages, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. The guest list conversation had continued while I worked. Apparently, the venue could only accommodate 60 people, so difficult decisions had to be made. Family members were analyzing who brought the most value, who had the best careers, who would look good in the wedding photos. My name never came up in the discussion, not once. I returned to my cleaning cart and rolled it toward the elevator heading down to the emergency department. The night shift meant dealing with whatever chaos walked through those doors. Drunk college students, domestic violence victims, elderly patients with chest pains, parents holding feverish toddlers. I had seen every kind of human suffering during my 3 years in this job. But somehow, none of that pain compared to the sting of being written off by my own family. As I cleaned the emergency waiting room, I noticed an elderly woman sitting alone, clutching a tissue and staring at the floor. Her husband was being examined behind closed doors, and she looked terrified. "Ma'am, can I get you some coffee or water?" I offered quietly. She looked up with grateful eyes. "Oh, sweetie, you're so kind. Could I trouble you for some water?" I fetched her a cup from the fountain and sat beside her for a moment. "I'm sure he's going to be okay. The doctors here are excellent." "You have such a caring heart," she said, patting my hand. "Your family must be so proud of you." If only she knew. I finished my rounds around 5 in the morning and drove home through empty streets. My studio apartment felt even smaller than usual as I heated up leftover pizza and collapsed onto my secondhand couch. Before falling asleep, I checked the group chat one more time. Brittany had posted another update about wedding planning. The conversation had moved on to discussing who would give the best toasts, who could afford the nicest gifts, who would network effectively with Derek's colleagues during the reception. I scrolled up to reread her original message about keeping it small and inviting only successful family members. Those words burned deeper each time I saw them. But as I set my phone aside, something caught my eye. A manila folder had fallen from my bookshelf, spilling papers across the floor. I bent down to collect them and froze. These were articles I had written years ago, back when I first started freelance work. Pieces I had completely forgotten about, published under a pen name I had chosen to avoid family judgment. The byline read E.L. Martinez, and suddenly a door to my past cracked open. I stared at those scattered papers on my apartment floor like they were treasure maps I had forgotten I owned. With trembling fingers, I gathered up the articles, recognizing my own words from what felt like a lifetime ago. The pen name E.L. Martinez seemed foreign now, like reading about a stranger. Why had I chosen that pseudonym? The memory came flooding back. After dropping out of college, I was too ashamed to use my real name for freelance work. My family already saw me as a failure, so I created an entirely separate identity. E.L. for Elisa Lynn, my first and middle names. Martinez because it sounded professional and detached from my family's expectations. My laptop sat gathering dust on my tiny kitchen table. I hadn't used it for anything except paying bills online in months. But now I opened it with curiosity, searching for that forgotten email account I had used for freelance work. The inbox made my jaw drop. 537 unread messages dating back over 2 years. Interview requests, collaboration offers, reader feedback assignment opportunities. I scrolled through them in complete shock, realizing I had built a career and then walked away from it without looking back. One email from 18 months ago had the subject line, "Congratulations on your Regional Excellence in Journalism Award." I clicked it open with shaking hands. "Dear E.L. Martinez, we are delighted to inform you that your investigative piece, Behind Closed Doors, The Hidden Struggles of Hospital Support Staff, has been selected as this year's winner for Outstanding Social Impact Reporting. The awards ceremony will be held at the Hartford Convention Center on April 15th. Please respond with your availability and contact information for media interviews." I had won a journalism award and never even knew about it. My investigative piece about hospital workers was based on my own experiences. I had interviewed custodians, food service workers, maintenance staff, and security guards about their working conditions, pay struggles, and the way they were often invisible to everyone else in the medical field. The article had been published in Connecticut Magazine and apparently touched enough people to earn recognition. I kept scrolling through emails, discovering a whole world I had abandoned. A financial advice column I had written for a small online publication had been picked up by 3 other websites. Readers were sending thank you notes saying my practical money management tips had helped them pay off debt and start emergency funds. One woman wrote that my budgeting advice had saved her from eviction. More shocking discoveries followed. A lifestyle website had been running my articles about finding happiness on a tight budget for over a year, paying me $200 per piece. I never saw those payments because they went to a bank account I had stopped monitoring. But the biggest surprise came when I searched my pen name on Google. E.L. Martinez had 4,700 followers on Twitter, a social media account I had completely forgotten existed. The bio read, "Personal finance writer and social justice advocate, believer in finding joy without breaking the bank." My articles were being shared regularly with readers commenting about how relatable and helpful my writing was. A major publishing website featured my work in their Writers to Watch section from 6 months ago. The description called my writing refreshingly honest and deeply empathetic, offering real solutions for real people facing financial challenges. I spent the next 3 hours reading through everything I had written over the past few years. Article after article about budgeting tips, interviews with working-class heroes, investigative pieces about social inequality, personal essays about finding dignity in humble work. Without realizing it, I had become exactly the journalist I had dreamed of being in college. And my family had no idea any of this existed. I was deep in this research when my phone buzzed with another group chat message. This time, it was Uncle Frank sharing a meme about participation trophies with the caption, "Thank God some people still understand what real achievement looks like." The implied dig at my generation was obvious. Aunt Patricia responded with laughing emojis and added, "Some people need to learn that showing up isn't the same as succeeding." I looked at my laptop screen, then at my phone, then back at the laptop. Here was my family mocking the very idea of effort and participation, while I had been quietly winning journalism awards and building a following of thousands of people who found value in my work. The irony was overwhelming. I clicked on one more email that had caught my attention. The sender was Beacon Publishing House, and the subject line read, "Book Proposal Opportunity, Time Sensitive." Dear E.L. Martinez, we've been following your work with great interest, particularly your series on economic resilience and social justice. We would like to discuss the possibility of publishing a collection of your essays tentatively titled Dignity in the Details, Finding Worth in Everyday Work. Based on your existing platform and the response to your published pieces, we are prepared to offer an advance of $250,000 for a full-length book manuscript. Please respond at your earliest convenience, as this opportunity is time-sensitive. The email was dated 6 months ago. $250,000, more money than I had ever imagined seeing at once. More than Derek probably made in a year at his finance job. And I had let it sit in my inbox, unread and unanswered, while my family planned a wedding that excluded unsuccessful people like me. I spent the rest of the morning diving deeper into my accidental success. My financial advice articles were being cited in academic papers about economic inequality. A nonprofit organization had used my budgeting guides in their financial literacy workshops. Community colleges were assigning my essays in their personal finance classes. E.L. Martinez had become someone important, someone who made a difference in people's lives. But Elisa, the college dropout who mopped hospital floors, was still seen as the family failure. As I prepared for my afternoon dog walking shift, my phone buzzed again with wedding planning chatter. Brittany was sharing photos from her dress fitting, looking radiant in an expensive gown that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Absolutely stunning," Mom commented. "This wedding is going to be perfect." "Only the best for our successful families," Aunt Patricia added with a winking emoji. I grabbed my laptop and started typing a response to that 6-month-old email from Beacon Publishing House. It was time to find out if E.L. Martinez still had a future, even if Elisa wasn't welcome at family weddings. But first I needed to understand how this had happened. How had I built a successful writing career and then completely forgotten about it? The answer wasn't pretty, but it was honest. I had been so beaten down by my family's constant reminders of my failure that I stopped believing in my own worth. I convinced myself that anything good in my life was temporary or accidental. Walking dogs that afternoon through the quiet suburban neighborhoods, I thought about all those articles I'd written under my pen name. Each one came from a place of genuine experience and hard-won wisdom. I knew what it felt like to stretch $5 until payday. I understood the dignity that came from honest work, even when others looked down on it. I had lived the stories I was telling. Maybe that authenticity was exactly what had resonated with so many readers. By evening, I had crafted careful responses to several publishers' magazines and interview requests. E.L. Martinez was about to make a comeback, even if Elisa still felt like a failure in her family's eyes. But something told me that was about to change very soon. The next 2 weeks brought a flurry of activity that I kept completely separate from my family life. I had responded to Beacon Publishing House, and they immediately scheduled a video call to discuss the book project. The editor, Sarah Chen, was enthusiastic about my work and explained that my articles had been circulating among their staff for months. "Your writing has this rare quality," she explained during our video call. "It's both deeply personal and universally applicable. Readers see themselves in your experiences, but they also learn concrete strategies for improving their own lives." She offered to increase the advance to $300,000 if I could deliver the manuscript within 8 months. $300,000. The number felt surreal, like something that happened to other people in different universes. Meanwhile, the family group chat had become increasingly toxic as Brittany's wedding approached. The success theme was no longer subtle. It had become the central organizing principle of every conversation. "Derek's colleagues are so impressive." Brittany posted along with photos from some networking dinner. "It's wonderful being surrounded by high achievers who inspire each other to do better." Uncle Frank responded immediately, "Birds of a feather." Successful people attract successful people. That's why this wedding is going to be such a celebration of excellence. Mom chimed in with, "I'm so proud of how our family has raised children who understand the value of hard work and achievement. Some families aren't so fortunate." The dig was clearly aimed at me sitting in my studio apartment wearing my hospital uniform before another night shift. But instead of feeling crushed, I found myself analyzing their comments with the detached interest of a journalist. These people were using success as a weapon defining worth purely through external achievements and material possessions. Aunt Patricia escalated the conversation by posting pictures from some charity gala she had attended. Rubbing shoulders with the city's finest tonight conversation was so stimulating when everyone brings their A game to the table. Brittany commented, "Exactly why I wanted to keep the wedding intimate. Quality conversations, quality people, quality memories, no dead weight dragging down the energy." Dead weight. That phrase hit me like a physical blow. In their minds, I was dead weight. But the cruelest moment came 3 days later when Uncle Frank posted a joke meme about family members who peaked in high school and never recovered. The image showed a cartoon character sitting on a couch eating chips while successful relatives celebrated in the background. "Too real," Brittany commented with crying laughing emojis. "Some people just can't handle adult responsibilities." Aunt Patricia added, "Thank goodness we have family members who show young people what success actually looks like. Good role models matter." My hands shook as I read their exchange. They were talking about me without using my name, but the target was unmistakable. In their narrative, I was the cautionary tale, the example of what happens when someone lacks ambition and work ethic. The irony was suffocating. While they mocked my supposed laziness, I was working 60 hours a week across 3 jobs. While they questioned my ability to handle adult responsibilities, I was paying my own rent, managing my own finances, and building a successful writing career they knew nothing about. I had accepted 2 major magazine interviews as E.L. Martinez. Connecticut Monthly wanted to do a feature story about my journalism award, and a national personal finance website requested an in-depth conversation about my approach to economic resilience. Both interviews were scheduled for the week after Brittany's wedding. The publishing house had sent me a formal contract, and I spent hours reading through every clause with growing amazement. Not only was the advance substantial, but the royalty structure was generous, and they were planning a significant marketing campaign. The editor mentioned potential television interviews and speaking engagements. "Your platform is larger than you realize," Sarah explained in a follow-up call. E.L. Martinez has become a trusted voice in personal finance journalism. Your social media following has grown to over 60,000 people, and your articles consistently rank among our most read content. 60,000 followers, people who valued my insights and trusted my advice. Compare that to the 60 family members who would attend Brittany's wedding, most of whom couldn't be bothered to acknowledge my existence. But the family cruelty reached its peak when Brittany posted detailed wedding planning updates that deliberately highlighted the guest selection process. "Finalizing the seating chart tonight," she wrote. "Derek and I want each table to represent our family's best qualities. Sitting successful people together creates such inspiring conversation. We're putting all the entrepreneurs at table 2, the college graduates at table 4, and the homeowners at table 6. Uncle Frank responded, "Smart planning. Let success breed more success." Mom added, "What a thoughtful way to honor achievement and create networking opportunities." I read between the lines. They were organizing the wedding like a corporate hierarchy, sorting people by their perceived value and status. The underlying message was clear: some family members were worth celebrating and others were not worth including at all. That night at the hospital, I found myself working with unusual focus and determination. I mopped floors with the knowledge that my writing about exactly this kind of work had won a regional journalism award. I cleaned patient rooms knowing that thousands of people had read and appreciated my articles about finding dignity in service jobs. A young nurse named Amanda stopped me in the hallway around midnight. "Elisa, I just wanted to thank you for staying late to help with that emergency cleanup in room 12. You always go above and beyond, and it doesn't go unnoticed." "Just doing my job," I replied, but her words meant more than she could know. "No, it's more than that," Amanda insisted. "You bring this positive energy to work that makes everyone's shift better. Patients comment on how kind you are. The staff appreciates how reliable and thorough you are. You're genuinely good at what you do." After she walked away, I stood in that hospital corridor thinking about the difference between recognition and appreciation. My family was obsessed with recognition, awards, titles, external validation, social status. But what I experienced at work was appreciation, people valuing my character, work ethic, and kindness. E.L. Martinez was getting recognition for her writing, but Elisa was receiving appreciation for who she was as a person. Maybe both were forms of success. I checked my phone and saw that the group chat was still buzzing with wedding preparations. Brittany had posted photos of her honeymoon suite reservation at some exclusive resort in Barbados. "Living our best life," she captioned the pictures. "So grateful to be surrounded by family who celebrate excellence." The comments were predictably enthusiastic, but I noticed something interesting. The same 15 people were responding to every post. The guest list for this exclusive celebration of successful family members was actually quite small, even among our large extended family. Maybe Brittany had excluded more people than she was admitting. Maybe I wasn't the only family member who didn't meet her standards. But unlike the others, I had a choice about how to respond to this exclusion. I could continue feeling sorry for myself, or I could embrace the success I had already built under my pen name. I spent the rest of my shift planning exactly how E.L. Martinez would make her presence known at this wedding celebration of successful family members. Because it was time for Elisa to introduce her family to the person she had become when they weren't paying attention. 3 days before the wedding, Brittany sat in her home office surrounded by wedding planning chaos. Seating charts covered her glass desk, vendor contracts were stacked in neat piles, and her laptop displayed a color-coded timeline of reception events. Derek was in the kitchen making coffee, preparing for another late night of final preparations. "Honey, can you double-check the guest list one more time?" Brittany called out. "I want to make sure we haven't missed anything important." She opened a spreadsheet containing every wedding guest, complete with their job titles, relationship status, and estimated income levels. The list was organized by social value with Derek's colleagues and business connections at the top, followed by family members ranked by their professional achievements. As she scrolled through the names, something nagged at her consciousness. During conversations with her mother about family dynamics, someone had mentioned that Elisa had been doing some kind of writing work. Brittany couldn't remember the details, but curiosity got the better of her. She opened a new browser tab and typed Elisa, followed by their shared last name, into Google. The search results showed a few social media profiles and a high school graduation announcement from years ago. Nothing interesting or impressive. Certainly nothing that would change her mind about the wedding guest list. But something felt incomplete. She tried different search combinations, adding journalism and college to the query based on vague memories of Elisa's academic history. Still, nothing significant appeared. Then she remembered that freelance writers sometimes used pen names. She searched for Elisa, combined with writing in Connecticut. One of the results mentioned a student publication from Northeastern University that had featured work by someone named E.L. Martinez. Brittany clicked on the link out of idle curiosity. The article was about student financial struggles written in a compelling first-person style that seemed familiar somehow. The author bio listed E.L. Martinez as a journalism major interested in social justice reporting. Derek Brittany called toward the kitchen. "Do you recognize the name E.L. Martinez? Some kind of writer." Derek appeared in the doorway holding 2 coffee mugs. E.L. Martinez. "Of course I know that name. She's one of the best financial columnists working today. I read her stuff all the time. Why?" Brittany felt a strange chill. What kind of writing does she do? Personal finance, economic inequality, social justice issues. She won some big journalism award last year, I think. Her articles get shared constantly on professional networks. Really insightful stuff about money management and finding economic stability. Why are you asking? Brittany's hands trembled slightly as she returned to her search. She typed E.L. Martinez journalist and watched the results populate with growing horror. Award-winning articles, thousands of social media followers, guest appearances on financial podcasts, a verified Twitter account with 63,000 followers, published pieces in major magazines and websites, an upcoming book deal with a major publishing house. She clicked through article after article, recognizing the writing style with growing certainty. The voice was mature and thoughtful, but unmistakably familiar. These weren't just random freelance pieces. This was sophisticated, influential journalism that had earned serious recognition. "Derek, come look at this," Brittany said, her voice tight with panic. He set down his coffee and leaned over her shoulder to read the computer screen. "That's her E.L. Martinez. I told you she was impressive. I've been following her work for 2 years. She has this amazing ability to make complex financial concepts accessible to regular people. Why are you researching her?" Brittany opened another tab and searched for E.L. Martinez, combined with Northeastern University. The connection became unmistakable when she found an alumni database listing that linked the pen name to a journalism student who had attended during the exact same years as her cousin. "Oh my God," Brittany whispered, staring at the screen. "Derek, I think E.L. Martinez is Elisa." Derek straightened up, confused. "Elisa who?" "My cousin Elisa, the one who dropped out of college, the one who works at the hospital cleaning floors, the one I didn't invite to our wedding because she's not successful." The silence in the room was deafening. Derek stared at the computer screen, then at his fiancée, then back at the screen. "You're telling me that one of the most influential financial writers in New England is your cousin, and you excluded her from our wedding for not being successful enough?" Brittany frantically clicked through more articles, her panic growing with each discovery. E.L. Martinez had been featured in Connecticut magazine's Rising Stars of Journalism list. Her investigative piece about hospital workers had won a Regional Excellence Award and been reprinted in 3 different publications. The social media following was enormous, with readers regularly commenting about how her advice had changed their lives. "Look at this," Derek said, pointing to an article headline. She wrote the definitive guide to emergency fund building that my entire office references. My boss shared her budgeting article in our company newsletter. She's practically required reading in our industry. Brittany felt sick. She had spent months planning a wedding designed to celebrate successful family members, and she had excluded someone who was more professionally accomplished than anyone on her guest list, including herself, including Derek. "What does she actually do for work now?" Derek asked. "She cleans the hospital at night," Brittany admitted. 3 jobs, actually. She walks dogs on weekends and does some writing, but I thought it was just small stuff for local websites. Derek was scrolling through more articles. Small stuff. She has a verified social media presence, a book deal in progress, and her financial advice has been cited in academic research. This isn't small stuff. This is a legitimate career that probably generates more income than most people realize. Brittany's wedding planning suddenly felt shallow and materialistic. She'd been so focused on appearances and status symbols that she had completely missed her cousin's actual achievements. While she was posting pictures of expensive dinners and designer handbags, Elisa was building a platform that genuinely helped people and earned professional recognition. "We have to invite her," Derek said firmly. "I've been wanting to meet E.L. Martinez for months. I can't believe she's your family and you didn't think to include her." "But the guest list is already finalized," Brittany protested weakly. "The seating chart is done. The catering count is confirmed." "Then we'll adjust," Derek replied. "Brittany, this is embarrassing. You built this entire wedding around the concept of celebrating successful family members, and you excluded someone who is more successful than 90% of our guests. How is that going to look when people find out?" Brittany's mind raced through all the social media posts she had made about the wedding guest selection process, all the comments about quality over quantity and surrounding themselves with high achievers, all the subtle digs about family members who hadn't reached their potential. If word got out that she had specifically excluded an award-winning journalist from a celebration of family success, she would look foolish and petty. Derek's colleagues would question her judgment. Her own family would realize how badly she had misjudged the situation. But beyond the social embarrassment, something deeper was troubling her. She had grown up with Elisa, shared countless memories and childhood adventures. They had been genuinely close before college, before career pressure and adult competition had complicated their relationship. When had she become the kind of person who measured family members by their perceived status? When had she started caring more about appearances than relationships? "I need to call her," Brittany said quietly. "Actually," Derek said, still reading through articles on the computer, "you might want to think carefully about how you approach this. According to this interview, she's pretty private about her personal life. She deliberately keeps her real identity separate from her professional work. There might be a reason for that." Brittany read the interview Derek was referencing. E.L. Martinez discussed the challenges of working-class writers in academia and journalism. She mentioned feeling pressure to hide her background because people made assumptions about her capabilities based on her family's economic status. The interview talked about choosing a pen name to avoid judgment and create space for her work to be evaluated on its own merits. It described the isolation of being successful in a field where people assumed you didn't belong. Brittany realized with growing horror that she had become exactly the kind of person her cousin was writing about. Someone who judged worth based on superficial markers instead of actual character and achievement. She had 3 days to figure out how to fix this situation without making it worse. But first, she needed to understand exactly how successful E.L. Martinez had become and what that meant for a wedding that was supposed to celebrate family achievement. The more she read, the more she realized that her cousin hadn't just become successful. She had become the kind of person Brittany had been pretending to be all along. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that makes Connecticut weddings picture perfect. Brittany woke up in the bridal suite at the country club surrounded by her bridesmaids and a team of hair and makeup professionals. Everything was proceeding according to her carefully orchestrated timeline, but anxiety gnawed at her stomach like a persistent ache. She had spent the past 3 days debating whether to contact Elisa about the wedding. Every time she reached for her phone, she remembered those articles about income inequality and social judgment. How do you invite someone to celebrate family success after publicly excluding them for not being successful enough? Derek had been diplomatic but firm in their private conversations. If E.L. Martinez shows up as a surprise guest, it's going to be obvious that we made a mistake. Better to address this proactively than be caught off guard. But Brittany couldn't figure out how to extend a last-minute invitation without admitting the insulting nature of her original decision. So she did nothing, hoping that Elisa would simply continue avoiding family events like she had for the past 3 years. At 11 in the morning, as the photographer captured getting-ready shots of the bridal party, Brittany's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Just arrived at the country club. Everything looks beautiful by the way Elisa is here. She looks lovely." Brittany nearly dropped her phone. "What do you mean she's here?" "At the ceremony. She's wearing a gorgeous navy dress and chatting with your grandmother. I'm so glad she decided to come after all." Panic flooded through Brittany's chest. She hadn't sent Elisa an invitation. There was no place card with her name, no designated seat, no meal counted in the catering order. More importantly, she had spent weeks making comments in the family group chat about excluding unsuccessful people. How would she explain this to Derek's colleagues who had heard all about the selective guest list? "I need a minute," Brittany told her bridesmaids stepping onto the suite's private balcony. She dialed Derek, who was getting ready in a different wing of the country club. "We have a problem. Elisa is here." "That's great." Derek sounded genuinely pleased. "I've been looking forward to meeting her." "No, you don't understand. I never sent her an invitation. She's not on the guest list. There's no seat for her at the reception." Derek was quiet for a moment. "So she showed up uninvited to support you anyway, even after being excluded from your celebration of successful family members." The judgment in his voice was unmistakable. Brittany felt like she was seeing herself through his eyes for the first time, and the image wasn't flattering. "Just fix it," Derek said. "Add a seat, adjust the catering, do whatever you need to do. And Brittany, be kind to her. She's clearly the bigger person in this situation." An hour later, Brittany walked down the aisle in her $1,000 dress, past rows of carefully selected successful family members, trying not to look for Elisa in the crowd. But she spotted her anyway, sitting in the back row looking elegant and composed, in a dress that was clearly well-made but not ostentatious. The ceremony proceeded without incident, but Brittany felt distracted throughout the exchange of vows. She kept thinking about those articles she had read, wondering what was going through Elisa's mind as she watched a celebration she had been deliberately excluded from. During the cocktail hour between ceremony and reception, the real chaos began. Brittany was posing for photos with Derek's family when she overheard a conversation that made her blood freeze. "Excuse me, aren't you E.L. Martinez?" One of Derek's colleagues was asking someone near the bar. Brittany turned to see the colleague talking to Elisa, who looked surprised but pleased by the recognition. "I am," Elisa replied, "though I'm surprised you know my work." "Are you kidding? I've been following your financial columns for 2 years. Your article about emergency fund psychology completely changed how I think about savings. Can I introduce you to my wife? She's been implementing your budgeting system, and it's transformed our household finances." Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered around Elisa. Derek's co-workers were starstruck, asking questions about her writing process and requesting advice on various financial topics. The photographer, who had been capturing candid cocktail hour moments, began taking pictures of the impromptu gathering. "I can't believe E.L. Martinez is at this wedding," someone said. "She's like the most practical financial advice columnist working today." Brittany watched from across the room as her cousin graciously answered questions and offered insights completely comfortable in a role that Brittany hadn't known existed. This wasn't the struggling family failure she had imagined. This was a confident professional being recognized by her peers. Derek appeared at Brittany's elbow, beaming. "Your cousin is amazing. I've been talking to her about monetary policy and economic resilience. She knows more about financial markets than half the guys at my office. Did everyone know who she was except me? Brittany asked weakly. Anyone who reads about personal finance knows E.L. Martinez, Derek replied. She's kind of famous in certain circles. The fact that she's your cousin and you didn't mention it is honestly baffling. As the cocktail hour continued, Brittany noticed her other family members discovering Elisa's success with varying degrees of surprise and embarrassment. Uncle Frank, who had made jokes about participation trophies, was now asking Elisa for investment advice. Aunt Patricia, who had mocked adult responsibility, was praising Elisa's work ethic and professional achievements. The photographer approached Brittany during a quiet moment. I hope you don't mind, but I've been getting some great shots of your cousin with the other guests. When I heard she was E.L. Martinez, I knew we needed to document this. She's been featured in several trade publications I work with. Featured how? Brittany asked. Journalist profile pieces interviews about her writing process. She won a big regional award last year. Pretty impressive to have someone like that at your wedding. Brittany felt dizzy. The wedding she had designed to showcase successful family members was being upstaged by the family member she had deemed unsuccessful. Guests were more excited to meet Elisa than they were to celebrate Brittany and Derek's marriage. But the most humbling moment came during the transition to the reception dinner. As guests moved from cocktails to their assigned tables, Brittany realized she still hadn't figured out where Elisa would sit. Derek had quietly added a chair to their head table, placing Elisa between his brother and sister-in-law. The seating arrangement that Brittany had agonized over for weeks, organizing people by their professional status and social value, was now being rearranged to honor the family member she had tried to exclude. As dinner service began, Brittany found herself watching Elisa instead of enjoying her own wedding reception. Her cousin was engaging easily with Derek's family, discussing economic trends and social justice issues with the kind of intellectual confidence that Brittany had always wished she possessed. The conversations at the head table were more substantive and interesting than anything Brittany had experienced at her own engagement parties. Derek's brother, a lawyer, was fascinated by Elisa's insights on economic inequality. His sister-in-law, who worked in nonprofit development, was taking notes on Elisa's suggestions for financial literacy programs. Your cousin is incredible, Derek's mother told Brittany during a quiet moment. Derek has been talking about her work for months, but he never mentioned she was family. You're so lucky to have someone like that to look up to. Look up to. Brittany had spent years looking down on Elisa, measuring her cousin's worth by external markers of failure. But the more she watched Elisa interact with guests, the more she realized who had actually been successful all along. The wedding was beautiful, the food was delicious, and the music was perfect. But Brittany felt like she was watching someone else's celebration designed by someone with completely different values than the person she was becoming. And the evening was far from over. The reception was in full swing when Brittany finally found herself alone with Elisa. Most guests were dancing or mingling on the patio, enjoying the perfect autumn evening. Elisa had stepped away from the crowd for a moment, standing near the country club's floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the golf course illuminated by soft landscape lighting. Brittany approached nervously, her wedding dress rustling with each step. She had rehearsed this conversation in her mind throughout dinner, but none of her prepared words seemed adequate now. Elisa, she said softly, can we talk? Her cousin turned with a gentle smile, looking remarkably composed considering the circumstances. Of course. It's your wedding day. That's just it, Brittany said, her voice catching slightly. It is my wedding day, and you weren't supposed to be here. Elisa's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. I know. I know you didn't invite me, Brittany. The whole family group chat made your guest selection criteria pretty clear. Only successful family members write. The directness of Elisa's response caught Brittany off guard. She had expected defensiveness or hurt feelings, not this calm acknowledgement of the situation. Then why did you come? Brittany asked. Elisa was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Because despite everything, you're still my cousin. We grew up together. I have memories of us playing in your backyard, sharing secrets, supporting each other through difficult times. I came because I wanted to celebrate this milestone in your life, even if you decided I wasn't worth celebrating with. The simple dignity of that statement hit Brittany like a physical blow. Elisa, I had no idea about your writing career, about E.L. Martinez, about any of it. I know you didn't. But why didn't you tell us? Why keep it secret? Elisa looked back out the window before answering. Because of conversations like the ones in our family group chat, because of words like unsuccessful and dead weight and quality over quantity. Because I learned a long time ago that some people will only respect your achievements if they fit their narrow definition of success. Brittany felt shame burning in her chest. Those comments weren't specifically about you, weren't they? Elisa turned to face her cousin directly. Brittany, you organized this entire wedding around the idea of excluding family members who hadn't achieved enough. You created a hierarchy where people's worth was measured by their job titles and income levels. Did you really think I didn't understand where I ranked in that system? Before Brittany could respond, Derek appeared in the doorway behind them. His face was flushed from dancing, but his expression grew serious when he sensed the tension in the room. "Everything okay?" he asked. "We're just talking," Brittany said quickly. But Derek had clearly overheard part of their conversation. "Actually, I'm glad you're both here. I have something to say." He looked directly at Elisa. "I owe you an apology, not just for tonight, but for the entire approach to this wedding. I let Brittany convince me that selectivity was the same thing as standards. But excluding someone of your caliber and character from our celebration was just poor judgment." Elisa looked surprised by Derek's directness. "You don't need to apologize. This is between Brittany and me." "Actually, I do," Derek insisted, "because I've spent the evening talking to my colleagues about your work, and every single person here who knows your writing has asked me how we were lucky enough to have E.L. Martinez at our wedding. Do you know how I had to answer them?" Brittany felt a chill of dread. "I had to admit that your family, that we've known about your success for months, and that we almost made the mistake of not including you in this celebration. It was humiliating not because you were here, but because it revealed how badly we had misjudged the situation." Derek's words hung in the air. Brittany realized that other guests were starting to notice their serious conversation through the windows. The photographer was discreetly capturing the moment from across the room. "There's something else," Derek continued. "When people found out you were E.L. Martinez, several guests asked if they could interview you or collaborate with you professionally. A reporter from the Hartford Courant wants to do a feature story about your work. The photographer has been documenting your interactions because he thinks there's a human interest angle about successful people staying humble and connected to their roots." Elisa looked alarmed. "I didn't come here seeking attention." "I know," Derek said. "That's exactly what makes this whole situation so ironic. You showed up to quietly support family and ended up being the most impressive person at an event designed to celebrate impressive people." The three of them stood in awkward silence for a moment. Through the windows, they could see Uncle Frank approaching with what appeared to be a business card in his hand, clearly hoping to network with E.L. Martinez. "Elisa," Brittany said finally, "I need you to know that I'm ashamed. Not just of excluding you from the wedding, but of the entire mindset that led to that decision. I've been measuring people's worth by the wrong standards." "What are the right standards?" Elisa asked quietly. Brittany thought about the evening she'd just experienced, watching Elisa graciously handle recognition from strangers, seeing her cousin engage thoughtfully with difficult questions about economic policy, observing the way Elisa had comforted their elderly grandmother during an emotional moment in the ceremony. "Character," Brittany said. "Kindness. The ability to lift other people up instead of judging them, making a positive difference in the world even if no one notices." Elisa smiled for the first time since their conversation began. "Those are good standards." I have one more question, Brittany said. The pen name, E.L. Martinez instead of your real name, was that really about avoiding family judgment? Elisa nodded. After dropping out of college, I felt like such a failure in everyone's eyes. I was afraid that if I used my real name for freelance work, people would research my background and discover the dropout story. I thought having a separate professional identity would give my writing a fair chance to succeed or fail based on its own merit. And it did succeed, Derek pointed out, spectacularly. Yes, Elisa agreed, but success without being able to share it with the people you love feels pretty hollow. I've been living this double life where E.L. Martinez gets recognition and respect, while Elisa remains the family disappointment. It's been lonely. Brittany felt tears threatening to ruin her wedding makeup. It doesn't have to be lonely anymore. The conversation was interrupted by a gentle knock on the window. The photographer was gesturing toward them, pointing at his camera with a questioning expression. He wants to take pictures of our conversation, Derek observed. Apparently, this moment is worth documenting. Elisa laughed. A family reconciliation at a wedding. That's probably not the story he's expecting to capture tonight. But as Brittany looked at her cousin, she realized that this unexpected conversation had become the most meaningful part of her entire wedding day. All the carefully planned details and expensive touches paled in comparison to this moment of honest connection. Actually, Brittany said, I think this is exactly the story that needed to be told. The photographer's flash captured the three of them together through the window, framing a moment that none of them had planned, but all of them would remember long after the wedding flowers had wilted and the dress had been preserved in a box. But the evening wasn't over yet, and Elisa's influence on the wedding celebration was about to extend far beyond their private conversation. The final hour of the wedding reception transformed into something completely different from what Brittany had originally envisioned. Word had spread among the guests about Elisa's identity as E.L. Martinez, and what started as a celebration of selective success had evolved into a genuine appreciation of authentic achievement. The reporter from the Hartford Courant, who had been covering the wedding as a social event, approached Elisa near the dessert table with a completely different story in mind. Ms. Martinez, I'm hoping you might have a few minutes to discuss your work. We're always looking for local success stories, especially ones that highlight perseverance and social impact. Elisa glanced toward Brittany, who was watching from across the room. Her cousin nodded encouragingly, finally ready to share rather than hide family success. I'd be happy to talk, Elisa said, but maybe we could focus on the broader themes of my work rather than personal details. The impromptu interview took place on the country club's patio, with the wedding reception continuing in the background. Other guests naturally gathered around, curious about the journalist who had apparently become the unexpected star of the evening. Your writing focuses heavily on economic dignity and finding worth in all types of work, the reporter began. Can you tell us what inspired that perspective? Elisa looked thoughtful. I think anyone who has ever felt invisible or undervalued understands the importance of recognizing different kinds of contribution. Some of the hardest working, most dedicated people I know are in jobs that society doesn't always celebrate, but their work matters deeply. Derek's business colleagues were listening intently, clearly impressed by Elisa's articulate responses. Several of them had mentioned during dinner that they regularly shared her articles with their teams. Your recent piece about hospital support staff won a regional journalism award. The reporter continued. What drew you to that particular story? Personal experience, Elisa replied honestly. I work nights at Hartford General as a custodian. I see firsthand how crucial these jobs are to patient care and safety. But I also see how often these workers are treated as invisible. There's dignity in all honest work, but not everyone recognizes that dignity. A murmur of surprise rippled through the gathered guests. Several people exchanged glances, clearly reassessing their assumptions about success and status. Uncle Frank, who had made jokes about Elisa's job throughout the wedding planning process, stepped forward with obvious discomfort. Elisa, I owe you a genuine apology. I made some thoughtless comments in recent weeks, and I'm embarrassed by my lack of understanding. Aunt Patricia followed with her own apology. We all made assumptions about your life without really knowing what you were accomplishing. That was unfair and unkind. Elisa accepted their apologies graciously, but used the moment to make a larger point. I think this happens in a lot of families. We create these narrow definitions of success and then judge each other accordingly. But meaningful achievement comes in many different forms. Brittany's mother approached the group looking emotional. Honey, why didn't you tell us about your writing career? We would have been so proud to support you. Because pride shouldn't be conditional on external recognition, Elisa replied gently. The same person who was worthy of support as E.L. Martinez was also worthy of support as Elisa, who dropped out of college and worked multiple jobs. My value as a family member didn't change when I started winning awards. The reporter was taking notes rapidly, clearly recognizing that this conversation was developing into something more significant than a typical wedding feature. Derek joined the group carrying 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to Elisa and raised his own for a toast. To E.L. Martinez, he began, but more importantly, to Elisa, for showing all of us what authentic success actually looks like, for maintaining your integrity and kindness while building an impressive career, and for being generous enough to celebrate with family who didn't always deserve your grace. The toast was echoed by everyone present, but Elisa raised her hand before they could drink. I want to share something with all of you, she said. This morning, I signed a contract with Beacon Publishing House for my first book. The advance was substantial enough to change my life significantly. But the most meaningful part of today wasn't the financial success or professional recognition. It was this conversation right here with family who are finally seeing each other clearly. She paused, looking around at the gathered relatives and wedding guests. Success isn't about excluding people who don't meet arbitrary standards. It's about including people who lift each other up. It's about recognizing that everyone has different struggles and different gifts. And it's about understanding that a person's worth isn't determined by their job title or bank account. The photographer captured the moment as champagne glasses clinked together, documenting what had become an unexpected lesson in family values and authentic achievement. As the evening wound down, guests approached Elisa individually to share their appreciation for her work and her perspective. Several exchanged contact information, hoping to collaborate professionally or simply stay connected to her inspiring approach to life and work. Brittany found herself watching these interactions with a mixture of pride and regret. Pride because her cousin was genuinely impressive and deserving of recognition. Regret because she had almost missed the opportunity to witness and celebrate Elisa's success. During the final dance of the evening, Derek pulled Brittany aside for a private conversation. This turned out to be a much better wedding than we planned, he said. Better how? More real, more meaningful, less about showing off and more about actually connecting with people who matter. Brittany nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Do you think Elisa forgives me for the way I handled the guest list? I think Elisa forgave you before you even apologized, Derek replied. But the more important question is whether you've learned something about how you want to treat people going forward. As the newlyweds prepared to leave for their honeymoon, Elisa approached them near the country club's entrance. She had changed from her elegant dress into more casual clothes for the drive home. Congratulations on a beautiful wedding, she said sincerely. I hope your marriage is filled with the kind of understanding and growth I witnessed tonight. Elisa, Brittany said, taking her cousin's hands, I want you to know that when Derek and I have children, you're exactly the kind of person I hope they become. Successful, but also kind. Accomplished, but also humble. Someone who lifts others up instead of putting them down. That's the best wedding gift you could give me, Elisa replied. As Elisa drove home to her small apartment that night, she reflected on the unexpected journey her life had taken. The college dropout who had been excluded from a family celebration of success had ended up being the most celebrated guest at that same event. But more importantly, she had learned that authentic success wasn't about hiding parts of yourself to gain approval. It was about staying true to your values while building something meaningful, whether or not anyone was paying attention. The next morning, Elisa's phone buzzed with notifications from the family group chat. But instead of subtle digs and exclusionary comments, the messages were filled with congratulations on her book deal, questions about her writing process, and invitations to upcoming family events. Uncle Frank had shared the Hartford Courant article about her work with a comment that read, "So proud to call this amazing journalist family." Aunt Patricia posted, "Can't wait to read Elisa's book. She's proof that real success comes from hard work and helping others." Even Brittany, posting from her honeymoon resort, had shared pictures from the wedding with the caption, "The best part of our wedding was celebrating my cousin Elisa's incredible achievements as E.L. Martinez. Family means lifting each other up." Elisa smiled as she read through the messages, then closed the group chat and opened her laptop. She had a book to write, articles to finish, and interviews to prepare for. But more importantly, she had a family who finally saw her clearly, and a career built on authentic values. The real success wasn't the awards or the book advance or the social media following. It was the ability to stay true to herself while making a positive difference in other people's lives. And that was a lesson worth sharing. Before I finish this story, I want to ask you something that I've been thinking about throughout Elisa's journey. Have you ever felt like you had to hide parts of yourself to gain acceptance from others? Maybe you've downplayed your achievements to avoid making others uncomfortable, or perhaps you felt pressure to present a different version of yourself to fit in with certain groups. Elisa's story reminds us that authentic success comes from staying true to our values while building something meaningful, whether or not anyone is paying attention. Sometimes the people closest to us are the last to recognize our worth, but that doesn't diminish our value or our achievements. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family dynamics and finding your authentic voice. Have you ever discovered that someone in your life was more accomplished than you realized? How do you define success in your own relationships? Please like this video if Elisa's journey inspired you to think differently about success and family relationships. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about overcoming judgment and finding your authentic voice. And share this with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' narrow definitions of achievement. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey with Elisa and Brittany. I hope their story reminds you that the most meaningful success comes from lifting others up rather than putting them down. Until next time, remember that your authentic self is always worthy of celebration, whether or not anyone else is ready to see it.